drama surrounding Amazon's Rings of Power is still going strong, and the train doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. Recently, the fake geek news page, Den of Geek, ran an article titled Lord of the Rings of Power, Why Fandom Has to Embrace Change by Andrew Blair. Reading the title straight away tells you that fans have to conform, and if we go over the byline, quote, intransigent and reactionary fandom is not new, but some responses to the Lord of the Rings of Power trailer show how damaged the culture has become, end quote. You can see right there that the attacks against the fandom have begun a la Star Wars, particularly with The Last Jedi. Do you remember that crapfest? Do you also remember 2016 and that all-female reboot of the Ghostbusters franchise? Do you also remember Star Trek, or more recently, the Masters of the Universe debacle that happened with Revelation and the idiot Kevin Smith? So now, all those Tolkien fans, they are reactionary. And of course that damages culture. Culture is in danger because of some toxic cis-white males trying to further the patriarchy, hate women, hate blacks, and all that nonsense that this imbecile Andrew Blair is trying to spew. But that is not the case, dear viewer. Fans have only and always wanted the lore to be respected. That's everything that they want, and especially when something as beloved as Tolkien's Legendarium is involved in this thing. In fact, I'd even say that some of these fans are as passionate as, for instance, Christopher Tolkien. And if you do not know who he was, well, he was Tolkien's son, but also he was his executor, so he was really passionate about his father's work, and some fans go to those extremes and even more. We haven't even started with the article, and you already see here how this is a response to try and deter all those fans from criticizing this piece of crap that is the Rings of Power, and how Amazon, alright, seem to have blundered this one. Now, the article says here in its first paragraph, quote, in response to the trailer for Amazon's new Lord of the Rings series, there has been a negative reaction based on the fact that not everyone in the series is a white man. Let me stop you right there, Andrew. No, the negative reaction has not been against not everyone being white inside the series. It's more like not respecting the lore. That's the thing that everyone is against. That this is not getting respected just in the way that it was first conceived. Sure enough, there are other colors of skin inside Tolkien's Legendarium, but let's also respect where they come from, how they are depicted, and what their purposes and motivations are, even if it's only for a small hint, because we don't really know much about, for example, Harad. We don't know much about Rune. We could just explore those places, but no, what we have to do is just further the agenda, push for this nonsense, for these senseless transformations that nobody was asking for. So no, it's not going there. Now, the article also mentions here the following quote, sure, there have been other negative reactions too. They've been trampled by review bombing rage. No! They have not been trampled over by review bombing, because nobody is review bombing this thing. They are saying just what they see and what the trailer itself offered, which was generic views of the characters, generic views of maybe a little bit of a plot there, but that's the key word here, generic. You could have just pasted there a title card for, I don't know, Games of Thrones, or maybe, you know, The Wheel of Time, or any other fantasy thing that you want, and it would be just exactly the same. It would make no real difference. And what makes Tolkien's work stand out is that it's not like any other fantasy. We don't see that here. So, it is generic, and because of that, people have been calling it out on that, not review bombing. The article continues, quote, in particular, a lot of people have been posting a quote attributed to Tolkien to highlight their disgust. Quote, evil is not able to create anything new. It can only distort and destroy what has been invented or made by the forces of good, End quote in that part, and Andrew continues with, which is frankly colossally lacking in self-awareness. We will see, Andrew, who is really lacking in self-awareness here, because we're going to analyze your pathetic and idiotic article here right now. So brace yourselves, because we're going to go hard into this one, and believe me, Andrew, there's going to be no loo for this one, so buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride for you, mate. Now, it says here in the article, The Rings of Power is an adaptation of the written word into a visual medium made in the third decade of the 21st century. It is not going to match books written in the middle of the 20th century in the same way as Peter Jackson's films do not match the books. Adaptations are affected by the change in medium and the context creative decisions are made in. Now let me stop you right there once again, Andy, because while it's true that mediums define how the story is going to be tackled and what we are going to see on screen or on the page or whatever, that is not why these changes were made in the first place. If you remember, the producer of this crap said for the Vanity Fair article that they tried to reflect the real world through Tolkien's world, and that doesn't even make sense. It is not even possible, because we are talking about a fantasy, and Tolkien himself said that while it's our own same world, it's not in the same level of imagination. That is important, because first of all, you lack imagination there in Amazon Studios. Also, Andy here is lacking in imagination, but also it's important because that means that it is not going to exactly reflect our world. That is important. Now, the article continues with the following quote. 20 years ago, there was a similar backlash, including from a teenage me, when Jackson's films made Arwen a more prominent character than in the books. Now, 20 years ago, there was no real backlash other than why is not Glorfindel here? But it was pointed out that it seemed a bit pointless to have another character develop it when you could just use Arwen and also use a bit of that star power. Why not? I mean, after all, Liv Tyler was a big thing back in the day. But nobody really complained about this, as nobody really complained about Gandalf being played by Sir Ian McKellen. Just like the OneRing.net tried to spew all that time. All of those instances in which they said, oh no, this thing is also happening, from the past. It's coming from the past. It already happened. No, that is not true, None of that actually happened. So, you were wrong here. But also, look at that little bit in which he says, including me, he's trying to say, I was like you. I was like all those readers that are now angry that the Rings of Power has some black elves, beardless female dwarves, all that jazz. I know, I felt like that too. I was there. And from there on, the manipulation begins. The manipulation of you, the viewer, of you, the reader, of you who say, no, this is not like the thing that I wanted. That is the part here. Now, the article tries to justify the adaptation and even dares hint at the notion fans don't even know what an adaptation is by saying the following part also, in which he says, looking back, I realize my objections were based on ignorance. So, you are an ignorant imbecile if you don't understand how an adaptation works? Because it's logical that that happens, and if you complain, you are just an idiot. Let me tell you something, Andrew. It's not ignorance. It's just wanting something to be respected. After all, many times it has been pointed out that the only things that fans ever wanted of comic books adaptations were for them to be as close to the source material as they could be. And sure enough, one of the most successful franchises right now, it does have certain variations and deviations from the source material, but the essence is there. For instance, The one that kickstarted all this, Iron Man, is based on the 1960s comic book, and let me tell you that in that case, the main character was not trapped by terrorists from Afghanistan or any of that shite. It was updated, and yet it worked, because it was an adaptation. Seems to me, it's just maybe an opinion here, an idea, that the one who does not understand how these things work is you. But, hey, I might be wrong. But the essential part of this article comes a little bit after that in this little sentence, and it's only one sentence that says Lord of the Rings has already been co-opted by the far right. This is the point the article was trying to get at. All that diatribe from above and all that dribble was just to prepare you for the heavy blow, let's say. Tolkien's work has been gate-kept by the far right and there is an faux perspective. So, you are there, in the far right. You are an ist and a faux. You are part of the problem. It's Tolkien's fault though, because he tried to glorify a past that's way too nationalistic, because he wanted to create a mythology for England, because it was all about the glory and all that bullcrap, you know. It even claims that some questionable individuals who loved the work are bad people, so everyone who has read Tolkien also tends to go into that direction, because these guys here, I am not even going to mention their names, I don't want to get censored, but you can read them here. Well, because they were murderers and they were racially motivated, well, that makes them bad people, that makes also their work bad. And also, of course, the author is bad, and the fans are also bad. You know what? Let's go and let's ask J.D. Salinger and all those The Catcher in the Rye fans. How do they feel that they also enjoyed the same book that inspired the murder of another person? Do you think that they are bad people because they like The Catcher in the Rye? Do you think that J.D. Salinger is a bad person for writing something that inspired a madman to kill another guy almost in front of his wife? Do you reckon that that's how it works? Because that's the impression that I am getting from this, Andrew. I'm getting the impression that you think that because somebody wrote something that is liked by everyone, and some of those people happen to be criminals, bad people, bad seeds, whatever, it also translates as the product being bad, and the author, for whatever reason, also being part of the problem, and I don't reckon that's how it works, you know? I don't know, maybe it's just me. But, as I said, this comparison is completely stupid. The article is using that false equivalence to go about how fascism has been around Tolkien's work, the fans, and how it also relates to things like Gamergate. What are we talking about here? That thing was like, I don't know how many years ago, and we cannot yet let it go. Come on! Give it up already, you know. Now, the article also goes with what happened with things like rabbit puppies, you know, sad rabbit puppies, the Gamergate thing, and here in this part also we have the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot, we have the Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, of course. We have all these things that we have talked about also before. The article is just trying to recycle these all fake stories, all these false claims and fake material that has no real source to back up the point that they were trying to drive home, and that is that the Tolkien fandom is going in the same toxic direction as the Star Wars fandom. It's talking about the Kelly Marie Tran situation with social media. It's talking about John Boyega. Let me tell you something. None of that was ever proved to be true. Kelly Marie Tran was not ousted from social media by the fans. John Boyega also said that he had a gripe with Disney, not with the fans. So none of that is actually true. And let's just remember that in the case of Ghostbusters, it failed miserably because he didn't make as much money thanks to Paul Feig having to just film other scenes that were suggested to him, and he didn't take that piece of advice. Let's also remember that the jokes were not landing that well, they were not getting people to laugh, and also that Paul Feig himself didn't really want to make a Ghostbusters film. Let's remember all that. It's important as well. And none of that is part of what this article is trying to boost. It's just using lies and false narratives to further a point and to further an agenda, trying to position Tolkien fans in the same basket, in the same cradle that they put those Star Wars fans, Doctor Who, Ghostbusters, all of that. It's not like that. Now, here, in the last part of this article, we have something that I want to address. And I quote, "The tactics of spamming and overwhelming conversation have been in place for some time now, and we should stop pretending that everything's fine just because fandom has the odd cute story about someone crocheting a rancor beast. There is a significant portion of fandom who are not in a position to be reasoned with. Report them, block them, move on. They cannot create anything new, only distort and destroy what we already have," implying that lack of self-awareness that he mentioned before. I don't think that the ones having to check their self-awareness are the fans. It is you, Andy. Really. If this show isn't trying to destroy Tolkien's legacy, tell us, Andy. Why should we care about it? Why is this show important? What are its traits that we should pay attention to and we should praise? So far, Andy, you haven't told us anything useful that can convince us of watching this show. There has been no reason to give it a chance. Only veiled attacks and very open attacks as well, like this, let's say, article, quote unquote, that we have here. It's just like what happened with Star Wars and with those other franchises that we already mentioned and that you also mentioned in your article. So, Andy, what is that enthusiasm? Who is really trying to destroy here? Pay attention to that. Who is really trying to mock? Who is really not creating? You see who lacks self-awareness? It is people like you. It is Amazon. They have all the money in the world to create new things, and instead they are trying to ride on the coattails of more successful franchises, but they don't even respect them. What they are doing, they are trying to spin it like it is the fans' fault that this thing is not getting anything and that it's not getting praised. By all means, let's just forget all those super fans, right? And major quotes there, because those have been debunked. By all means, let's forget all those super fans talks, all those videos from different countries, and let's focus on telling the fans that they are terrible people. Nothing could be further from the truth. All that is destroying, is distorting. So you see who really lacks self-awareness? You see who really is not paying attention? People writing such idiotic pieces like this one, Andy, are only part of that machine, and it is up to us fans to kick them out, you know? That machine that is there in Hollywood and that Amazon is also now a part of, and that they are trying to destroy everything that we hold dear, and fans must protect it. We have the examples of a Star Wars failed attempt, a failed franchise with Disney. We have also Masters of the Universe, and we can only be sure that the same tactics that they applied there and they are applying now to the Rings of Power cannot work for Lord of the Rings. What we have to do is be wary and stand away from this. Hollywood won't change. It is us who have to change, and we have to change also our consuming habits. If we give this a chance, they will try it again, and again, and again. Now it is not up to me to say what you have to do, what you must be doing. But let me tell you something. I care about this because it's one of my favorite books. And Tolkien is one of my favorite authors, if not my most favorite one. I don't want to see his work destroyed. But it doesn't depend only on me, it depends also on the rest of the fans. If you don't want to see this destroyed, reconsider, because they are going to destroy it in any way that they can. In the end, and as I always say, the decision lies with you. These videos are only meant as warnings for you that we have seen these tactics before, and we know the outcome. If we don't want the same thing to happen to Tolkien, then we must act and avoid this show at all costs. Believe me that I will not be watching it. I am talking about it, but because I want to warn you. And I just share with many of the YouTubers that have talked about this, and I try to keep in contact, because to me it is important to spread the message out there. And I don't want anyone really to pay attention to this out of curiosity only, because that helps Amazon think that this is a success, and they have to know that we don't like it when they bastardize and when they vandalize our culture. So, let me know what you think, and let me know if you are interested in this or if you are interested in fighting against this destruction of what we believe in. Until next time, everyone.